Makes sense that we start with the financing of the hospitals. I've been told that by several sources in this room that there was not enough funding for consolidation of the hospitals last year. So the question that springs from that, the obvious question is that a story that you recognize? And if it is, the follow-up to that is this the new trend? Do we need to expect this going forward? And I should say one thing, ladies and gentlemen, before Judith answers that, which is one of the reasons that we are so pleased to have Judith back is that it's really important that we have someone from the government side to put the government side, but also to engage in the conversation. And Judith did that with grace and collegiality last time. So thank you once again for being the only government member on this stage. But perhaps we'll start with that question of finance then. Was there enough money last year? And if there wasn't, what are we going to do about this year?
Thank you very much. Do I need to...
Just at the top again.
Okay. Now it works? Yes, perfectly. Thank you. So thank you very much for the invitation. I'm always happy to be here. It's a huge possibility. Of course, as we could hear in the marvelous presentation before, it's always a very difficult question to define properly enough money for financing a healthcare system. I think nobody was able to manage it all around the world. So the money is never enough, and nowhere there is nowhere enough money for financing the healthcare system. But I think the most important thing is that we should clearly see the reason of the overspending. We should really see the efficacy of the current system and whether if it works properly, or is there any room for make it more effective. And after that, we can start the 100% consolidation just after that. Before facing for and realize what is the real reason of the overspending in the hospital, I think we are not allowed to put more money into that certain system that doesn't work properly and doesn't work efficiently. And we try to figure out the reason. I think there one very important thing to say that when we compare the healthcare spending, we should focus on those part of the healthcare spending which is now, as a hospital basis, is more than 50%. It's around 53% of the spending. It's the salary submission that is provided by the health insurance fund separately to the DRG to the DRG system financing. So we add to the hospital more money for submitting salary to their workers, to the doctors and the nurses. So we have to take it into consideration whether it has a higher percentage, a higher volume, finance-based, regardless the efficacy, regardless what the hospital really did and how they work. Regardless this fact, we provide an enormous volume of money to the hospital. I think we have to think it over whether is this the proper way of the financiation, or do we need somehow to recalculate the financiation and make new rules for the financiation. And after that, I'm pretty sure that there will be 100% consolidation for the hospitals. So you don't need to expect that it will be year by year that there will be a planned deficit at the beginning of the when planning the budget act. So we definitely don't want to do this way, but we would like somehow to find a proper system for the working, the most efficient system for working, for operating the hospital, and after that, then we'll finishing the consolidation.
If I can, I'm sure that our co-panelists will have thoughts to add, but if I can just do a follow-up question very, very quickly. This exercise in finding efficiencies where are we with that? How long a project is this? And when might we get to a stage where we can look at the financing?
We made lots of analyses, really the thousands of analyses. And one important thing that we could realize that the spending of the hospital, more than the 90% of the spending of the hospital is for salary. 90%. So only 10% is that belong to the medication, the technology, and so on. Of course, there were some other restructuring of financing, infrastructure, and operation cost. But now it's more than 90% of the hospital spending is for salary. So we have to, of course, see why there is a limited number or smaller number of making operation and patient treatment day, why there is a decrease in supporting of the hospital treatment for patient, because there is a decreasing trend.
Okay. Co-panelists, does anyone want to jump in on this? Wolfgang, you would amaze me if you didn't want to jump in on this.
So, we had a kind of rock concert feeling. Well, what we also learned from the presentation, this is a difficult situation. Yeah? Allocation of money, GDP, state budget, then directly or indirectly, we have to finance a war. Yeah, and we really see that not only the Hungarian government is under pressure. Yeah? However, when we talking pharma, supply of pharmaceuticals to patients, this is of course a big issue when within a value chain, a supply chain, it's not paid. As you said, 90% of the costs in the hospitals are for personnel. That means just 10% is all the other costs, including the pharmaceuticals. But if, let's say, in between companies, if I tell my business partner, listen, I have a structural problem in my company, and I sort this out, and whenever this happens, I'm going to pay you. And I don't know whether this is in 3 months or in 6 months or whatever, but please be patient. This is a problem. Especially everybody has bills to pay, and we now, for my shoes as a Phoenix, as a wholesaler, we are working with a low one-digit profitability, and this is beside times with record high interest rates. So for us, this is a big pressure, and just to give you a flavor what we're talking about, if you see the wholesale segment. At the end of 2022, we had not settled invoices of around about 15 billion forint, and at the end of last year it was 30, it just doubled. Yeah, and also there was no then recovery in January. So I see, but you know, for the sector, I think it's difficult, and especially if you see this in times of missing goods in the sector. I think this is also not helpful, because we have to give the pressure towards also to the producers, because we are not a bank. Yeah? And then at the end of the day, if I have a product which is anyway not available, or there's not enough quantities in Europe, then I maybe start to think about where should I sell this. So if I'm not paid, and I mean this is not a question of helping out each other in case there's a problem, but so. And I'm a bit afraid, seeing all the pressure what we have, that maybe this is not going to be better this year. But I don't have the solution, yeah, but maybe you have an insight for us. Yeah?
Do you want to respond to that?
Okay. Yeah, it works.
It's a government conspiracy.
No, I wouldn't want to say it. I don't, of course, everybody is working on the solution. Actually, today there is a discussion in the government for financing the hospital or provide any more consolidation to the hospital. So it's really, we are really working on that. But as a government responsible for a proper and efficient allocation, we are not able to do and not allowed to do to send money or to spend money on a not efficient system and just prolong this situation that there is a bad infrastructure, there is a bad structure of the hospital operation, and provide more money to maintain this or to prolong this situation. But I think this year there will be definitely some changes. Probably you are aware that there is an intention to somehow to coordinate the pharmaceutical spending in the hospital. There will be an organization who will be responsible for a proper management of this kind of working process. So I think there will be new trends in this area as well.
So we should hope to see some development soon. Okay, fine. I won't push you any further on that because that's unfair. Wolfgang, can I just check something with you because I'm slightly deaf in my old age. Did you say your unpaid bills had gone from 15 billion to 30 billion? 30? Yes. Yeah, he said yes.
Yes, for the whole sector, not only at our company, but in the pharmaceutical wholesale sector.
Okay, all right. Wow, that's I'm not a healthcare professional, but I deal with business, and that's not good business. I can tell you that much. Not your fault. Okay, so look, we've touched on the ugly question of money, as József put it earlier. I'm anxious to get our other panelists involved in the conversation, and so I'm going to ask you a provocative question. And it's a dangerous question because there's the possibility of a very short answer. So I hope you will engage with the question and give us something other than a very short answer. Selene, Carolina, let's start with you, Carolina, as you're furthest away from me. Is it good to be a global generic pharma company these days?
Well, not really. You know that generics over two last decades provided quite a significant saving to the payers across the globe, and everything was going really well, and we tried to find a lot of efficiencies. One of the efficiency was also, moving the raw material production to East, like India, or going to China, and everything has changed with COVID, but it's changed for everybody, not only for generics, right? The issue we faced was mostly because of the broken distribution channels, but also the cost of goods increased quite significantly. On top of that, we have been enjoying quite low inflation before COVID, and then because of COVID and the war, inflation went really sky high, which made us in a very uncomfortable situation where the payers were still expecting generics to go lower with the prices. And this is the role of generics, right? So I'm not blaming anybody for wanting it. It's just that for us, the profitability is really, really low nowadays because of all these aspects I mentioned. But I need to say that, especially here in Hungary, we've got very open communication channel, and Mrs. Bidlo, as Deputy State Secretary, she has a full understanding of what we are dealing with, and we have a very robust and good discussion on that. So on top of that, obviously, we've got this tax issue that we are also discussing. So, long story short, Probably not easy, but our role is to really make sure that we take care about supplying Hungarian patients especially, and providing the best prices, the best affordable prices possible.
Yeah, I mean it's as you say yourself, the one thing people expect of generics is that the product is cheaper.
That's right.
So you're kind of you're stuck with that as everyone's mentality, their starting point, isn't it? Selene, what about yourself? If it comes from the government source, it's safe.
You need to put it on.
So, of course, I can't answer this question as representing the generic business, but I can reflect from the originator innovative pharma. I think I have two major, perhaps, answer to that. So, first of all, I think it's important to see the entire pharma as a whole. For example, what Carolina was mentioning, all these issues like, AIP supply, which is active product ingredient, and, the inflation, the production costs is not limited to any subgroup. I think this is also the problem, the major issues for innovative pharma as well. We know that majority of the innovative pharma, large scale, also the production has been shift to East, and not all of them. Just to give my company as example, like we have like 80% of our production in Europe, being a German originated company, but this is an exception. So I know that this doesn't reflect the industry average. However, majority of the production is in the East. So as soon as there is a COVID crisis or this Panama or Suez Channel issues, we have a significant supply issue across the globe. So I think it's important to approach as a holistic thing. The second thing is much more at a higher level. I think it is good that we have a good generic companies worldwide, and we have a originator companies together, because I believe this is an ecosystem, and the life cycle of the treatments, life cycle of the medicines. I'm not talking as a pharma person, but also as an individual patient, caregiver, or like a citizen. So I think it's important that we have all these businesses healthy for the healthy ecosystem of the products to continue. And the third one, looking specific to Hungary, I believe that there are certain mechanisms that are, I think, giving enough space for generic business in Hungary. I think the measures and the initiatives are encouraging currently in Hungary. So this is like an observation. In terms of the tax, again, I think it's important to know that all these local measures are important, not only for subgroup, but also for innovative industry as well. So we should approach also holistically for the healthy overall pharma industry. I would suggest.
Quelle surprise. The generics don't like tax, and neither do the innovative companies. I've been a business journalist for 25, 30 years. I don't think there are many people who like tax, so that's probably not surprising. Wolfgang, you sort of sit, I mean, literally, you sit between the generics and the innovatives and on this table. From your logistical standpoint, do you see a difference in the business? Do you see that it's harder now for the generics than pre-COVID?
And obviously what we see for many years that we have in generics a kind of race to the bottom with the prices. There's really big competition, which is at the end of the day something which most governments also appreciate, because it's bringing down cost in healthcare, which was the idea. But over time, we are now in a situation because if you would like to produce something cheaper, you have to be more efficient. It goes for volume, and there's a shakeout, and we have less and less production capacity, and we have big factories not anymore in Europe. And what we have to see that most of the APIs are not produced here, and that makes us dependent, and coming maybe to other topics. So from a government point of view, I can understand it, but I think maybe it's a bit short-sighted, because in the long run, we will face problems like stockouts and a certain dependency. If all our or 90% of our supplies at the end of the day originating from China or India, I don't know what will happen in case we have maybe conflicts on the rise and we will not be supplied. On the other hand, to solve this, we are talking about a long time. So meaning, yes, I think for the it's a problem. Prices are going down, and I do not see this really changing because of this. This needs a completely different approach also from the viewpoint independence of truck production of Europe, for example, or at least in the Western countries.
I mean, I guess that was everyone's major learning from COVID was perhaps it's not a great idea to have everything dependent on China or India if you're talking about vaccines, for example. You seem to twitch. Would you like to have a...
Oh, thank you. I just would like to mention one thing that is important to understand the pricing and reimbursement system here in Hungary. This is that because of the free movement of goods in the European, so this is one of the found issue in the European Union, is the free movement of goods. We have to have the same official price level for medication, or nearly the same official price level for medication as in the Western European Union countries. The reason is because there will be a parallel trade occur if there is a huge discrepancy between the price. That's why we initiated the system in 2010, I guess, or 2011. It was maybe some of the here in the room can remember on Sale-Kalman plan, which was a very famous one in the history of the pharmaceutical reimbursement system. We initiated a system that we keep the price level at the European level. Of course, it has to be the lowest European, but at least the lowest European and not below below the lowest European. And there is a tax. That's how we manage the system, that the official price is nearly similar that in the Western European countries, but there is an additional tax system which provides the possibility, which makes meet the affordability of the Hungarian economical system. That's why we initiated this tax system, and I think it works properly. The last farmer breakfast, I remember that we touched this issue as well. Of course, the ratio of the magnitude of this tax, it has been increased a huge, and it was affected. I mean, theoretically, equally all part of the Hungarian pharmaceutical system, but of course it did not affect equally our system, because while the innovative companies and the domestic companies has the possibility to deduct this tax or to decrease with some other if they have investment or R&D expenditure, the generic companies does not have this possibility, because of course they are generic companies, so they are not R&D investing companies. That's why we're now working on the process how we can compensate on somehow, and we have tough negotiation with the Ministry of Economy and the Ministry of Finance. But I think everyone could accept that this situation can be solved, because at the end of the day, if there is no generic available here in Hungary, the whole reimbursement system will collapse, because this creates the sustainability. And I'm your mics. I have your mic, so please.
No, you would. Thank you for that. No, I mean, clearly the system cannot work without the generics. I think everyone would understand and agree that. Let's talk about something that Wolfgang touched on there, though, which was supply. I'll invite you, Judith, to perhaps outline what the government is trying to achieve with this, and then we'll move on to the other panelists because they will have very real life experiences. So we've had the list of strategic medicines issued, and the obvious question is what does this mean in practical terms for the manufacturers, and indeed the wholesalers. Before we get there, what is the government trying to achieve with this list?
I think the COVID made it clear for everyone that it is very important that we should have our own supply chain from manufacturing via the wholesalers and to provide access medication. That's why we need to have an updated list what is available here in Hungary. And this is the reason for creating this strategic list. So we have to see clearly what is available here, what has the production here in Hungary, what has enough, if there is enough on stock of this medication, and we will be able to prepare for the shortages of medicine, or we will be able to prepare to handle easier the situation if it is occur. So it is really to defining a situation to be clearly what is produced here, because of course if a product is produced here in Hungary, it will be much more easy to available if there is any shortages or some other, if it is not. So that's why it is a very wide list. So it's not a smaller one. We did not focus only on the life-saving drugs and life-saving medication, but it's rather that we would like to provide for the patient and to provide for sustain the healthcare system here. And within this list, we need to see clearly what is available here, what is manufactured here. Is there any cooperation between those companies that has manufacturer site here in Hungary? So that was the reason really to formulate it. Of course, it gives us a possibility somehow to see what these products, if there are any urgent steps need, we can define easily. Do not need to say it in the law that, okay, we think on those products that were providing by your company. So it's much easier if we can say that, okay, these are the available products, these are important for us, and it is very important to know that what products are available and manufactured here.
So just to very quickly follow up, is one of the strategic goals of this list that you will be able to identify and solve problems with shortages ahead of time?
Exactly, with shortages and for smaller supply chain and supply way, if there is a possibility to have it in advance.
Thank you very much. Who wants to go first on this? Celine, you?
I just have the mic, so yeah, I can. Yes, indeed. So perhaps comments and a little questions also that is in my mind, because the topic is so new, so that we are also trying to better understand this topic. So as Judith said, I think it came with the COVID and all the other shortages, and it was not even in Hungary, because we know that this topic was also across Europe, like this, minimum stock strategic products initiative from European level. So the idea is very clear: in case of emergency or scarcity, how we can ensure that the local patients are benefiting the treatment. I think the guidance is very clear. In terms of the practicality or day-to-day execution part, I totally understand. The one focus part is the local production, because this is the easiest or the fastest solution. So basically, the two questions I have in mind, or not have the clear visibility, is in terms of the life-saving drugs or other important products that unfortunately currently we don't have a local production, how we can also ensure that these products are also available for Hungarian patients with this strategic focus, because there are many other type of diseases as well that requires continuous treatment, like oncology, hematology, you name it. This is the first thing. And the second is, in terms of the practicality, asking for this around 4 weeks of stock is a, let's say, good security, but referring to Wolfgang's point of that, in such a case that we have these active ingredients, majority of are coming from Asia, or if there is another supply problem or quality problem, requirement is one thing, but how we can ensure that the products can be really produced and stay, so how we can ensure that the initiative can really serve for the patients at the end. These are the two ideas in my mind.
So is this an ongoing conversation that you're having with the government about trying to understand these?
Yeah.
Sorry, so for just to reply, not with the manufacturer especially, but with the wholesaler. Yes, we have an ongoing conversation with him. For the first question, I think we have to separate, because there is lots of collaboration within the European Union for handling the shortages. So for the real life-saving drugs, there will be a kind of European cooperation on them to provide or to allocate fluently this kind of medication. We did not want to touch this part of the life-saving drug, because it has a European Union cooperation on defining the shortages and to handle it. So that's why this strategic list is rather focusing on the Hungarian population as a wider population. On the other hand, I think there is a lot to discuss and to clarify. This, of course, this 1 month has to be provided by the wholesaler only for those that has been sold by this certain wholesaler within the last 12 months. So it's not for the whole. Not every wholesaler has to, because the companies have the wholesaler authorization in the most of the time. So they do not need to have on stock all the product that's on the strategic list, but only those that have been sold by this certain wholesaler. But of course, the most important thing is to have an alarming sign if there is something out of stock. And that's what we have a discussion on that, and we need to define how it will work and what will be. But the most important thing is that in time or on time have an alarming sign based on this strategic list.
Karolina, Sandoz, does Sandoz have a few on this list?
No, we don't actually. Before I answer this question, I just wanted to add a little comment, because I really appreciate this generic approach in terms of the taxes. But I also didn't mention that Health Fund is very open now to discuss also the price increases. I mean, if we have a very valid and proper argument. So I wanted to use this opportunity and say big thank you, because the situation is difficult, but it's not impossible, right? So just wanted to make this point. I didn't want to be like, all black colors, right? And answering this question, no, actually, we don't have any. I mean, we've got a lot of strategic molecules in our portfolio. However, we don't have a production in Hungary. I have to say that Sandoz production mostly is in Europe. Obviously, the raw materials are coming from East, but the production is coming from Europe. So we were kind of hoping that as a part of European Union, we could be included and have rather, European Union sign rather than Hungarian sign, because of lack of the production facility in Hungary. But I guess, this is just a wish that I can express, because, we might come to the situation that a Chinese company, comes to Hungary, produces it, and we still need to, compete much stronger. Let's put it this way. But no, we don't. Answering the question again short, no, we don't.
Yeah, and the one thing we know from current practice is that the possibility of Chinese companies coming to Hungary is not something that you should ignore. So that's a real possibility.
That's right. So therefore, we were kind of hoping that maybe, we can open a little bit more to the European facilities as well. Especially, antibiotics, all our antibiotics are being produced in Europe, and the shortages here are quite huge. So we believe that this is one of the strategic product that also for Hungary.
Wolfgang, I know that this is an issue that interests you deeply. So, where do you stand on the list and how it works?
First of all, I can confirm that the wholesale organization is in talks and in good talks with the government about this topic. Maybe next time would be great, even a bit earlier, when the problem is framed, because it's obvious that the avoidance of shortage is of utmost important, and it's also the responsibility of the government. That is not a question. But when we are framing the problem, we would like to avoid shortages. I have some doubts whether this is the right medicine, which is in the legislation, which is now already published. Why? At the end of the day, beside providing information, which I think is really important to have a kind of radar, where is maybe a shortage on the rise. This legislation says that every company who has a wholesale license has to have of the defined articles a stock of a minimum 30 days. We are talking about around about 300 molecules and 2,000 articles. Meaning this is also affecting a lot of producers who might be not aware of this yet. Because a lot of the producers have a wholesale license. According to the law, as we understand it now, you can clarify it, and then I'm happy. We still have some questions here, but the thing is, if we just see now the situation in the wholesale, for these articles we analyzed, we have an average stock of 24 days. The new law means we have to increase this to 30, which is 25% more. But if we analyze what is the root cause of shortages, then this is not that the wholesalers do not have enough stock. It's simply that this product is not available. So because it comes from somewhere and it cannot be produced. So 6 days does not really make a difference. Where we have really shortages, these are products which are not available for a longer time. And the 6 days will not help. But this 6 days creates, I would say, quite significant extra costs in the system. Just imagine we calculated this and we need around about 15% more storage capacity for this. And these are products which are cool chain, which have to be cooled and heated, and this is quite some cost. Not mentioning the stock value. What has to be financed? And I can tell you, we are not going to finance this. We will speak to you. And we are talking about between 10 and 15 billion forint. So we can, of course, we have our modules. The government has a model. How much will it cost? But we have our own figures. We will see. But it would be a surprise for me in case we could not analyze our own figures. So what I want to say, this is a really important issue. But I feel these regulations will not really help, but create more costs. And at the end of the day, more costs is exactly the opposite of what we are looking for in the system. But maybe we can adjust this a bit then in the future.
But I think the one thing that we've learned over the now two breakfasts is that there is an open door for consultations, at least. Do you want to come back on that?
Just a word to clarify it. Of course, I think we had a very fruitful discussion with the Association of the Wholesalers together. So I think it's important to discuss every small details, because I think the sky is not as dark as now you can see, because there are some misunderstanding. But I think we will find a solution, and what is the real goal, how we can achieve it, and it will not cost you as much as now you see as a first sight of clarifying a decree. But I think we have the proper place to discuss it and clarify it.
Yeah, and with the best will in the world, we're not going to answer every question in great depth here. I'm also conscious of the fact that time is passing. There are a couple of questions. Wolfgang, did you want to come back, or you're okay? You're okay. Okay, good. There are a couple of questions I really want to touch on before time defeats us. Let's talk about hospital pharmacies, because that's always an interesting conversation. I understand that there are going to be some changes to the operation of institutional pharmacies or hospital pharmacies. But what's not clear to me, at least, is how this solves problems with supply, whether it's even intended to solve problems with supply. Sorry. It's also kind of curious as to what that will then mean to manufacturers and to wholesalers. And then there's a sort of philosophical question in this as well, which is that vertical integration in the pharma sector hasn't really been encouraged up to now, and this would seem to point towards a different direction. So is there a change? Is that something that the government is perhaps looking at, and is that something that perhaps the wholesalers might welcome? Where are we with hospital pharmacies? What is the government trying to achieve?
As we started this roundtable and this discussion, the overspending of the hospitals and the most important reason and the request was the medication, of course, and not to get the money from the hospitals. That was one reason we started to think over what we can do. And of course, on the other hand, we take a look through Europe, and we can see similar operation in Norway, in the Norwegian and the Scandinavian region as well, where there are centralized association operating the hospital pharmacies as well. So we think that if there is a centralized operation, it can guarantee that all the money, all the medication are used in the hospital, will be financed, will be managed, will be paid, because there is a centralized system, and the hospital will not have the possibility to say not to pay not to pay the money for the medication itself. I think we have to realize, and it's extremely important that since together with the doctors' salaries, the pharmacist salaries increased hugely in the hospital, which gives us a possibility that there is really a premium pharmaceutical management in the hospital now, both in a professional way and both in an economical way. So we have to strengthen this opportunity and not to take the hospitals in a situation when they have to choose whether they would like to employ a pharmacist or a doctor or a nurse, because if there is a centralized system which gives the possibility to operate the institutional pharmacies, it gives the possibility to have a proper system, and the pharmacist will have the possibility really to handle the professional question, the pharmaceutical management in the hospital, together with consulting with the doctors, and not just focusing on the economical issues. What is very important that the professional management will be headed in the pharmaceutical question will be headed by the hospital still. So there will be this organization will be just provide the logistic support and to the hospital, so not the professional pharmaceutical, based on the pharmaceutical profession management. It will be managed by the hospital as well, and the hospital will decide what treatment they would like to provide their patient and how will operate. Of course, there are lots of consultation on this side together with the hospital pharmacists, with the association of the hospital pharmacists, and individually with the hospital pharmacists. So I think this the most important thing, as we are here now, as a company perspective and the hospital point of view, and the wholesaler point of view, that this can guarantee that the deficit will not, that the cost of the medication will not part of the deficit anymore, because it will be paid centralized by the government.
I don't want to set this up as an adversarial thing, but it seems to me the most obvious counterpoint to that is the wholesaler point of view rather than the manufacturers. We will come to the manufacturers, but Wolfgang, does this sound like a good idea to you? Not that I would want to ask provocative questions at all, but...
Okay, let's start what I like. So the idea that such kind of restructuring would lead to a situation that the financing of the pharmaceutical supply will be smoother and there will be enough funds for this. I mean, this is of course highly appreciated. I think it also makes sense. What is the situation? The hospitals we're talking about, let's call it state hospitals. They're in state hand. And also the pharmacies which are operating there are in state's hands. So there's one owner, and you have to manage this at the end of the day to be efficient, but of course foremost for the good of the patients. So well, these are grown structures, and for years the government is on to optimize this. I think this is okay, and from that point of view, it has also a logic that they would like to centralize it more. Because when it's about purchasing, administration, and I think this is not a question that centralization makes sense. And as Judith said, the professional questions are still in the hospital. So far, so good. The question is now whether the proposed solution to bring this, I mean, we are talking, to my understanding, we're talking, this is the whole hospital market at the end of the day, which is around about 1/3 of the market, which is 900 million euro, and roundabout. And we're talking about that that a private company is going to get, let's call it a monopoly on the purchasings of all this volume for, I expect, for quite a long time. And then my question is this really something which is needed? What problem shall this solve? Especially, I don't know. It is more for the macro-communist scientists. Monopolies usually do not work very, very well, especially over time. And I assume that this company, this private company, has also to do investments. So a lot of details are still missing. I just question whether the envisioned operation model is really something which is good for the government and for the patients at the end of the day. And maybe a macroeconomic perspective on this. At the end of the day, it is about more efficiency. Yeah? You have to save costs. That's also not a question. But if you see the value chain of pharmaceuticals, we have the producer, we have the wholesaler, we have the pharmacy, we have the hospital. And now, this change will not make any difference to this value change in terms of prices. So if I would like to save money, I have to, I don't know, what can I really save on the hospital side? Not really. The structural costs, I do not see that there will be a lot of layoffs because of this. So the question is, I assume that the focus is on the purchasing power of this 1/3 of the market, and that goes to the wholesalers and to the industry. There's no other way. And also assuming that if there's a private company, they expect profits, so they have also to be earned. So this is a question whether the setup, which I do not fully see, frankly speaking, is really a good idea. That the government is centralizing this somehow makes sense.
Okay, so parts of it make sense, but whether it's the right answer is a different question, so to speak. What about the manufacturers? Céline, does the idea strike you as a good idea? Does it seem to be solving a problem that needs to be solving, or is it just something that you don't have the bandwidth to think about?
So I think we are in the position right now to understand, observe and understand mode, since the process is recent. So I understand the concerns of the supply chain, and think perhaps what I can comment on that, on the top of the mentioned perhaps topics, is if we are searching for efficiency, perhaps a question could be like, are there any points that we can also look at that? For example, without knowing too much the details of how it is run, that this, let's say, tendering process, like especially if it is the cost, the saving, this hospital tendering, how we can optimize the process to have a much more competitive biddings, and perhaps to evaluate the exact demand of the hospitals, so that perhaps securing that the majority of the products are going through this tender process where there is a competitive bidding, and perhaps to minimize these random purchases which can be more expensive. I'm looking at from hospital perspective now. Most probably there might be some additional measures for cost saving topics. This is what I can perhaps mention.
Carolina?
We are in similar positions, so we are sitting and waiting because we don't have too many details to really give a comment. So I would just agree with my colleagues.
Okay. We really are chasing time now, and I do want to at least give the opportunity for some questions for the floor. But one more question that I really want to explore before we do that, because it gives us a chance to be collegiate. It gives us a chance to think about how things can be done for the better, for patients at the same or lower cost. So how? It's a big philosophical question, I know. How can government, manufacturers, wholesalers, pharmacies work better together to improve the level of care? And we'll float one idea out here, which is pharmacies operating, or perhaps a group of pharmacies operating, without the physical presence of a pharmacist in each and every building. So you have an overseeing pharmacist with working with a number of different pharmacies. Would that work? Would deregulation make sense? So are there more things that we can do around online activities? So what can we do? How can we explore ways of working better together to get these efficiencies and these cost savings? That's Wolfgang is bursting to go, so we'll let Wolfgang go first, and then we'll come to you, Judith.
Thank you, Robin. You mentioned quite some examples, but I would like to come back to something what we discussed in our last breakfast, and I think even if the impact for the time being might be not, especially here in this room, not fully feelable, I think it shows it is a very good example for how things could be changed, and this will improve quality of service for the patients, and actually not increasing costs but decreasing. And this is this example of this, we call it affiliate pharmacists in Hungary, that there's not necessarily a pharmacist available. They're special. We are talking not about general pharmacists in cities, but in a very small village, sometimes they're just open a few days a week. And but so important that there is somebody, and especially the elderly or the very ones who are not mobile, can pick up their medicine. And what we saw in Hungary, we had a declining trend of this number of pharmacies for a decade, and it's really a problem. And this is an economical question, because a pharmacist is really expensive. He deserved it, but the sales in this affiliate pharmacists are very low. To make a long story short, the government, and I think Judith was behind this, made it possible that in these special cases, it is not necessary that a pharmacist is there, because the logic was better to have this kind of pharmacist than no pharmacy. And what is the effect? This came into force in February, and we already see that it declined, because every month this pharmacist declined. It already stopped, and we already have, I think, 5 more, and this just started. And that shows this was a really good example, and I think you can do what you want. There's always somebody who's complaining, but I think overall, this was really the right direction. Other examples, I think, in regulations, still, I mean, deregulation. Always, we shall be careful about this. This is not for itself. A solution, but I think there are possibilities. I mean, one thing, e-commerce, you can discuss from a lot of perspectives, but it's clear that somehow to make it a bit more easier to ship products to patients, I think this makes sense. There are some ideas, and of course we're talking medicine and not Coca-Cola or chocolate. And it has to be clear that it does not destabilize the whole system with cherry picking. But I think there's some potential, and I hope we'll have upfront a good good conversations about how that could be structured.
Carolina, you and I were having an interesting conversation last week about a related but different thing, which was over-the-counter availability of drugs. Because I've been here long enough that I can remember when I first came here, petrol stations, if it was a Sunday night, you weren't close to a pharmacy that was open, but you could go down to the petrol station and get a cold remedy. And that got changed. And I know that there's a similar system in the UK. There's a similar system in Poland. Whether you think something like that might be a way of opening up these communities.
Definitely the new channels could be a potential to drug availability, although there are some dangers. And I understand that, especially being a mom and, having my son being able to buy anything in grocery shop is probably a fact which you taken into consideration while doing that. However, yes, it is existing in most of the countries, and so far it works pretty okay. But what I wanted to say also, and a little bit opposite to, having a pharmacy without the pharmacist, also in some of the countries, I think Spain, but also Poland is looking into the new regulation to give even more power to the pharmacists. So really upgrade the job of the pharmacist to give them some additional tasks to be done. So, for example, during the COVID in Poland, pharmacists were able to give vaccination. They can give also, some care in terms of, measuring the blood pressure and giving some advice to the patients, which released then a little bit of time for GPs to focus on more important tasks, if you like, right? So that could be, I know it's difficult to get a pharmacist, but maybe upgrading this job of pharmacists, that it's not only selling the drugs, but also supporting healthcare system with some additional tasks could be also an interesting one, because for young pharmacists, especially, that upgrades and give them a little bit more kind of happiness of doing the job than just, selling over the counter.
Well, it's also status, isn't it?
It is, exactly.
Yeah, and this is, in saying this, is in no way to say that's a reason for Hungary to do it, but they're exploring exactly that in the UK now. Things like, blood pressure checks,
that's right,
vaccinations.
That's
again,
right.
Something that came out of COVID. Celine, you really wanted to jump in on this, I know.
Perhaps I can share another example. During the COVID period, I was working for Poland-Baltics region, and Estonia, as we know, the most digital country of Europe. Yeah. Of course, it's a very small one, so that it might not be adaptable. But even in 2020, especially during the COVID, we have seen that end-to-end closed-loop digital distance treatment, which means that patient was sitting in the living room, So the getting the appointment, doctor meeting, online video, prescription, and then the prescription goes to the pharmacy, and then the delivery comes to the door. So sitting in the living room, the patient was able to, of course, for simple treatment. This type of solutions are generally possible with digital embedded, so that this kind of deregulation, as much as we can combine with the digital, we can. Time is up. My mic is off.
Judith, I suspect that your driver is getting anxious. And I don't like to make drivers anxious.
He is my chief of staff, so.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, okay. Yes. Definitely not. Yes. All right. Would you like a last thought then?
Yes, and I would like to reflect two things, I think, which is important. One is that there is no contradiction between you, and we try to solve both things. Because I think if we provide the possibility that the presentation of the pharmacist in the apotheke is optional in a small village, gives us a possibility to increase the responsibility of the pharmacy if there is. So we still working on the possibilities and on the guideline how we can upgrade, as you mentioned, the pharmacy's possibilities. We will provide them a possibility to prescribe a medication if it is already prescribed to the patient and not available for the doctor and the other. So we are still working on it, so I think there is no contradiction on that. And one comment I would like to say is the deregulation, which is one of my highlighted thing, because I think in Hungary it is terrible that probably nobody is aware. I was even not aware that, for example, that those structure of a hospital, that what kind of department is operating in a hospital is announced in a law. So it's not a publication, it's a law, it's not a decree, it's in a law. And I think if you would like an adaptive system, if you would like a fast recognizing system, you have to deregulate, and I started it because these are pharmaceutical company, everybody will understand that we made a huge subsidizing them the financing protocol and providing the treatment center list, because it's much easier now, so we started this deregulation process, but I think it's extremely important to have an adaptive system on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Look, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really, really sorry. Time has run away from us, and I know that Judith really does have to go, so I'm going to wrap it up there. My apologies that we didn't get to do questions from the floor. There is still a chance for some networking. Not everyone has to leave, so if you do really have an urgent question, perhaps you can pigeonhole afterwards. I think my key takeaway from all of this is that at least in the face of Judith, we have an open door approach to consultation, and that a lot of these things are ideas which are out there, but they're not finally firmed up yet. So there is the chance to talk about things like efficiency, like things like tax, like things like pricing, which are all really, really important to the system. So it's I think it's one of those questions where stakeholder membership has to involve all parties. All parties have to be able to speak, but all parties have to actually have the ability to sit down and listen to each other and exchange their views. Ladies and gentlemen, I really do apologize for the fact we've run out of time, but please thank once again our stimulating keynote speaker, Dr. Josef Bodrog, and our panelists, Judith Bidlo, Selen Seydanli-Bisson, Carolina Demus, and of course, Wolfgang Wallisch. Our thanks to our professional partners, Phoenix Group and Bain Pharmacies, for their continued support in making this possible. And of course, thanks to our hosts here at the hotel for such a wonderful breakfast. And thank you to you all for your coming out this morning, for your attention. We hope to see you in a few months' time at the next one of these. Thank you very much.